On this episode of Retro Car Guy 530, I'm going to program these 4 fobs into my Chevrolet SSR using an Autel MaxiSys MS906 scan tool. You do need a scan tool to program fobs into the SSR. I had hoped to use the ThinkDiag scan tool that I've been reviewing recently on the channel, but there's still some deficiencies in the software for this particular tool to program the fobs into the SSR, so we'll hopefully come back to that in a later video. Well, I'll go through and program the fobs that I have here. I have the 2 original fobs from the SSR when I purchased it, and then the 2 additional fobs here are actually GM fobs for another vehicle, and as long as their FCC ID is the KOBLEAR1XT and their 4-button, they likely will work with the vehicle. I will have the part number information for that. And I'll show you that the order they're programmed into the vehicle determines the driver number. The number 1 and number 2 that are on the back of the original fobs that came with the SSR, like the number 1 that's molded into that one, is purely informational. And I'll go through a demonstration where I program number 2 as number 1 fob and number 1 fob as number 2 to show you that it's purely the programming order. And then in the end, I'll go through and try to answer the question. I've had some questions about the original keys that came with the SSR. They have that black plastic covering, and a lot of people think there's a security chip in there. There isn't. This key here works just fine. Got it when I purchased the vehicle over 10 years ago, and there's no security chips in the keys, so we'll go through a demonstration of that. So let's get into it. I'm now going to program the key fobs for this SSR, but I'm going to take the 2 original fobs, make number 1 the number 2 or driver 2 fob, and the number 2 the driver 1 or number 1 fob, just to confirm the fact that it doesn't really matter what's on the back cover. It's the order that the fobs are programmed into the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and set the programming tool down to make it a little bit easier here. You'll see a screen capture of that separately. So we're going to go into that. Now that we're in here, I'm going to select 2 key fobs, and the ignition is on. I'm using my extra key here that has there's no black plastic cover, it's just a bare metal key here. Like any of the SSR keys, they're just keys. The black plastic cover is just a decorative cover for it. There's no security chips in those keys whatsoever. So we've entered into programming mode. When you hear the door locks, do the lock-unlock procedure. And I'm going to use fob number 2 here. We have to press both the lock and unlock buttons simultaneously. And it's acknowledged the programming of that fob, and it says key fobs were programmed successfully. Switch to the next fob. And now I'm going to take the one that's marked number 1 here, and I'm going to press the buttons on that. And we've successfully completed the programming phase for the 2 fobs requested. And now I'm going to show you the data for the remote function actuation module, where that's the one that has the data for the fobs, live data. And we can see at the top of the screen we have number of fobs programmed 2. And the last fob was fob 2, and then key press was unlock all doors. Again, number 1 is actually fob 2 in this case. And notice down here we have counters for low battery events. And with the OEM fobs, I have had no problems, but with the aftermarket fobs that I purchased, I did have problems when I tried to add those. They programmed okay, but they just didn't. They always generated a low battery event for those particular fobs. So I'm going to go ahead and press the unlock here, and that shows the driver door unlock. Second press, all doors unlock, and the last fob used was fob 2. But again, I have it as number 1. This is the number 1 fob. And now if I press any button on what is known to the vehicle as fob 1 at this point, the driver information center will show driver 1. So let's press the unlock for fob 1 as it's programmed into the vehicle. And we'll see on the driver information center, it says driver 1. And again, I have the number 2 fob here. So this is to prove not everyone agrees with the fact that they programmed this way. And just want to make sure I demonstrated the fact that it doesn't matter what's on the back of the fob. It's purely the order that they're programmed into the vehicle. So that proves that point, and now I'm going to go ahead and program all 4 FOBs into the vehicle and demonstrate the different driver numbers assigned to it and the functionality of what buttons are available on FOBs 3 and 4. I'm now going to program 4 FOBs into the SSR. I'm going to use the 4 FOBs I have here in my hand. My original number 1 FOB, my original number 2, my purchase of these used OEM FOBs I've marked as number 3 and number 4. There's no markings whatsoever on the back to identify any number. So I put the white labels on to make it a little bit easier here. So we're in the remote function actuation module here in my scan tool. And I'm going to go into special functions, program key fobs. Now we're prompted for the number of fobs. I'm going to say 4. And then click on OK to start this. The engine ignition is on, engine off. I have that bare metal key that I showed you earlier in the video, which is one I was given with the vehicle when I purchased it back in 2009. So we've entered into programming mode. You know that from the lock and unlock of the door locks. Here we have fob number 1. So I did the lock and unlock simultaneously on the button presses, and it acknowledged that key fob programming. So let's click OK, switch to the next one. Do the same thing, press the lock and unlock button simultaneously. Program successfully. And now we're switching to number 3 fob here that I have marked. So that's the third one. Lock and unlock simultaneously. So that one was programmed successfully. Go to the last one here, number 4. And it says key fobs were programmed successfully. Press escape when done. So let's pick this up here. Let's go back into the live data. And we can see the number of program fobs is 4. The last fob used was number 4. And we can see that if I press any of the buttons here, again, this is number 4. When I use the aftermarket ones, the key fob low voltage events would go up. So I'm going to press any button here, and it does not increment at all here. Here's the other one. That should show that fob 3 was the last one used. It was. So we have the 4 fobs programmed successfully into the vehicle, and now I'm going to demonstrate the association between the programming number as far as 1, 2, 3, and 4 and which driver number that is. Now this is fob number 1, and if you go between driver numbers, it will display that in the driver information center. So we have pressed the buttons on fobs 3 and 4, which are actually driver 3, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So I'm going to press the unlock button on the fob 1, and it should show driver 1. And there it is in the driver information center. So when you go between a fob that's programmed in a particular order, so in this case I've got fob number 1 that's associated with driver number 1, and any personalization settings that are associated with that will be recalled at that point for that particular user of the vehicle. Now I'm going to go to fob number 2 and press the unlock, and we should see in the driver information center that it says driver 2. And it does. So any personalization settings associated with that user, like stored seat positions, anything that's... The SSR has limited personalization settings, but there are a few. So anything like that will be associated with the last fob used. And now we come up to the number 3 and number 4 things here. So the fobs number 3 and number 4 you would think would be driver 3 and driver 4. There's actually only 3 drivers from my testing here. So if I press the number 4 fob, we'll see driver 3 on the screen here, and we do. And notice if I press the unlock on fob 3, which I have here in my hand here, it won't say anything, because as far as the vehicle is concerned, there is no difference between these as far as driver number. So FOBs 3 and 4 are grouped together as far as driver number. And also there's a functionality difference between these FOBs. Anything number 3 and number 4 basically have the cargo lid button ignored. They still function. If you program these as number 1 or number 2, they would function just fine. But you'll find that when I press that, in this particular case, it won't open the cargo lid. Now looking out at the cargo lid cover here, and I'm going to show you that FOBs 3 and 4, which are associated with driver 3, don't actually open the cargo lid. So you press the button and nothing happens. So you could consider this a valet FOB in that sense. That way you could give them the FOB, so when they would lock the vehicle with the FOB, it would arm the alarm system in the vehicle, but it wouldn't allow them into the cargo area. So I'm going to take FOB number 1 here, press that button, and there you go. So FOB 1 and FOB 2 have that ability. So you'll hear the relay when I press the button here. For this is FOB 2 and FOB 1. But again, for FOBs 3 and 4, there is no action taken when that button is pressed. But again, I've tested this where these are in positions 1 and 2 and they work just fine. You press that button, it actually does open the cargo lid. I'm now going to show you the use of a regular metal key here with no black plastic cover to confirm the fact that there's no security chip inside the black plastic covers of any of the keys. Some people have discussed with me in the past the fact that they thought that there was a security chip in there. There isn't. There's no reader ring around the ignition switch like it is my Caprice. The 2014 Caprice does have a ring around the ignition switch area to energize the chip inside of the key or the FOB, and it operates in a different manner. The SSR uses a standard metal key, so that's why you can use one like this. This is actually one I was given from CarMax when I bought this vehicle in 2009. Works just fine. So I've last used FOB number 1 here to open the door. And let's see if we can get that a little bit better in view. It says driver 1. And I'm going to go ahead and start it. And there's no security lights or anything on the dash. This is just to prove the fact that there is no security chip necessary to operate the SSR. Of course, the key has to be keyed correctly to the ignition switch lock cylinder that's in the vehicle, but that's the only requirement. A basic key for the SSR is all you need. In this video, I've hopefully demonstrated the fact that you can add up to 4 FOBs to your Chevrolet SSR or Trailblazer or other vehicles similar in this model year range. And the programming capabilities are something that requires a scan tool. There's no key operational mode that some vehicles have where you put the key in and open the doors or do some sort of special programming dance inside the vehicle to get it to program FOBs. You needed a scan tool to perform that. I use my Autel MaxiSys MS906 scan tool for that operation today, but I'm hoping that the ThinkDiag scan tool will get that software fixed in the near future so that you can take advantage of a more inexpensive tool to perform the same function if you want to do it yourself. Or you could have a local locksmith or dealership perform the function, but it's very quick. As you've seen here, it's probably no more than 2-3 minutes max to do it. So it shouldn't be they shouldn't charge a lot for it. But if you have that ThinkDiag scan tool, when they have that function corrected in their software, you can do it with that. Or tools like or hopefully you have a friend with a scan tool like the one I have here and used in this video. So hopefully you found this information to be helpful. I'll have the part number information for the GM FOBs for the other vehicle that I have here that I used as FOBs 3 and 4. Again, it doesn't matter which order, they could be FOBs 1 or 2. So these could replace the original FOBs if you lost them or if you only have one. And I know it's difficult to get the SSR FOBs with the logo on the cargo cover button. I believe Saturn Ions have that particular cover here, but it doesn't seem that they may be functional. I'm trying to locate one to test, but I have the information. I know that these work, and there's no problems with the low battery button presses like with these, like I was having with the aftermarket ones. So I would stick with something OEM at this point. They worked, the aftermarket ones, as far as doing what they're supposed to do, but they generated those low battery events. So I would try to stay away from those if at all possible. Hopefully you found the information in this video to be helpful. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit that bell notification to be notified when I upload new videos just like this to the channel. I hope you've come back to the channel and check out my other SSR videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.